Hello everyone and welcome to Blaugrana Everything and welcome back for what is going to be an abridged podcast episode. So, it's around about that time where I'm going to be talking and talking quite a bit. But it's mostly just looking at some of the stuff that's gone down over the past few days, starting with that win against Barbastro and, I guess the performance from that. And everything else that's happened since then and today, which is Tuesday night. So, we'll be looking at everything that we could possibly have coming up for us, looking at the next game, which is on Thursday night against Osasuna in the Supercopa. So we're going to talk about all of that and also some injury updates. I would say maybe interesting news regarding injury updates, if we can put it that way. Anyway, without taking... Well, it feels so weird when I say anyway. Anywho, without further ado, let's just go straight ahead and to talk about, that Barbastro game to start with, because, Barcelona were playing a fourth tier team and, well, one of the things which I always hate about these games is, to be quite honest, as the big team, there is honestly nothing to gain from these fixtures. You could win 8-0 and it's like, oh yeah, you're supposed to win 8-0 against a fourth tier team. Really, the only thing that you have to lose is basically people picking you apart for anything that you did, and that doesn't come from you dominating the game. Let's put it that way, right? So Barcelona, of course, conceded 2 goals against Barbastro, and naturally that's basically what the focus is on here. How do you concede 2 goals to a fourth tier team, only scoring 3 as well down the other end? And I would say that it kind of was let's say this was a performance for the first half where Barca did dominate a lot of the stats, dominating the ball, dominating the chance creation, and should have gone in 2-0 up, but one of the goals was ruled out wrongfully for offside. But then I just felt like that bad call kind of put a stink in Barca, took away their swag during that second half, and up until that wonderful assist by Hector Fort for Rafinha, Barcelona hadn't really been on the up in that game. And really that continued as, Barbastro put a goal back. Then it wasn't until later on that Barcelona were able to get third through Lewandowski, and they had quite a few chances to score fourth and the fifth, but that didn't happen. And at the end of the day, well, what's coming from this is that naturally Barcelona ended up losing this game in a way, they're the biggest losers after that game, especially because everybody has been throwing around this stat. I think we've all seen it by now. It's been 20 fixtures now. Barcelona have failed to win a game by more than 1 goal. So that means since Antwerp, I think, Barcelona have not won any of their matches by more than a single goal. It's all just, 1-0s, 2-1s, and in this case, 3 2s. So yeah, that's probably it's not a good look. And the reason why is just because you're playing a fourth tier team. Okay, if Barcelona was playing even a second tier team and they only won 3-2, people would be like, Barcelona will caught napping here and there. But when you do it against a fourth tier team, it's kind of inexcusable. So that's where that really is coming in. And well, it's not going to get much better for Barca because their next opponents in the round of 16 for the Copa del Rey are Unionistas de Salamanca, to say their name in full. And they are as well, if I'm not mistaken, a fourth tier team, unless I'm mistaken of someone else, in which case the third tier. And on top of all of that, they are fresh off of a bit of giant killing that they did in the round of 32 because they knocked out Villarreal. Sure, they did it on penalties, but they still knocked out a team that's playing way, way above them. And anyway, generally, Villarreal has been quite sus this season. Apart from that match against FC Barcelona, which they still lost, I haven't really seen Villarreal play well this season, to be quite honest. Anyway, Barcelona are going to be playing the guys who claimed Villarreal's scalp in Salamanca, and, well, it's going to once again be one of those matches where you really don't stand to gain anything even by winning that match. But sure, you win that match, you get into the quarterfinals and everyone's like, oh yeah, you got there by beating the, fourth tier team, congratulations, wow. so impressive. It's not really going to be much of anything to write home about. Should Barcelona beat Unionistas, and should Barcelona once again only beat them by a goal, whilst conceding at least 2 goals, and well, it's going to be the same kind of atmosphere, which isn't exactly going to dispel the funky vibes that Barcelona and Xavi have at the moment. And I think part of it is really just an exaggeration, because if we go back to last season in the round of 32, Barcelona were away at Intercity. And guess what happened? They needed extra time in that game. Okay, they needed extra time because the match ended 2-2 after normal time. And they needed the extra time. Actually, now that I think about it, I think it ended 3-0 and not 2-0. One of those. I stayed up all night watching that game, and I really can't remember too well how it ended. But the point being that last year in the round of 32, Barcelona struggled, and I think in the round of 16 as well. So, struggling against these lower tier teams in the Copa del Rey, it's nothing new. It happens. I mean, how many times has Real Madrid been knocked out in the round of 32 of the Copa del Rey over the past 5 seasons? I'm going to tell you, it's a lot more than twice. So these things do happen, and because, Barca already currently in that funk that they were in, after those matches against Almeria and against Las Palmas, it just adds to everything. And right now, I think this match coming up against Unionistas it's not going to make anything much better, especially if Barcelona come into it after having lost their next match, which just so happens to be the Supercopa against Osasuna. And safe to say this is going to be Barcelona's biggest challenge of the new year, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I guess Las Palmas are higher up the league table than Osasuna are, so, maybe that one was, at the end of the day, a bigger test. But we'll see. I think Osasuna will be a bigger test because generally Barcelona struggles against Osasuna. We saw it earlier on in the season when Barcelona needed a late Lewandowski penalty to beat Osasuna by 2-1 in a game which could have easily ended as a draw. And that's who they're going to be playing for this Super Cup match. And like I said, Barca tend to struggle against Osasuna, so let's see how all of this unwraps. But generally, I wouldn't get my hopes up, I think, for this game. Just, because the team isn't that much of a funk, and because Xavi keeps on insisting on overplaying, I think, some of his players. Because if I could just take you back a little bit to that game against Barbastro, I was wondering, personally, why was it necessary to have a whole Robert Lewandowski play in this game? Okay, we saw Ilkay Gundogan get a rest, which was a correct decision, if you ask me. He did need to be rested in this one. And, we saw a few other, first team players not get on the pitch. But then you wonder, why exactly was it necessary even to play with so many first team players? Your Koundés, your Araujos, you probably rested some of those guys. Why didn't guys like Sergio Roberto get the start here? Fermin, of course, was Barcelona's best player on the night, so I'm not going to complain that he played. But why didn't we see more youngsters? We only saw Hector Fort, despite the fact that Xavi had a lot of them sitting on the bench. You had your Casados on the bench. So many kids like Pau Victor as well on the bench. And don't even get me started on why Vitor Roque didn't start in this game. Didn't really need to be out there risking players like Rafinha in this game, who right now I'm convinced is our most dangerous player. Rafinha, that is, If you want to argue, fine, go ahead and argue. But you can look at the numbers, and the numbers will confirm what I'm telling you right now. He's our most dangerous forward. And you think that you don't want to risk him, you want to keep him as fit as possible, especially with this Supercopa fixture coming up just around the corner. But anyhow, point being, Xavi kind of overused some of these players who could have been rested in that game, like I've mentioned already. I think Frankie de Jong in particular didn't really need to be in this game. It's not the kind of match where you need, to have your nukes on the pitch, right? Frankie is one of Barca's top 3, top 2 players, probably. And all of that, I think, it all just ends up adding to the funk that Barcelona are in. Because guess what? If Barca won 3-2 and it was a bunch of kids that had played, nobody would be saying anything. Everybody would be saying, wow, the future looks so bright for FC Barcelona. And I guess anyway, Xavi really right now is in desperate need of that one match that's going to switch the narrative around his team, just as quickly as that loss to Real Madrid changed the narrative for Barca's season. Because, up until then, Barca had been undefeated, and up until the 75th minute of that game, Barcelona had been clearly the better team. So, I guess beating Osasuna is probably the first thing that Xavi will have to do in that regard with respects to switching the narrative around his team and, taking back his power. like they would tell us, in the walk circles. Taking back his power from Real Madrid. Of course, you'd probably have to beat Real Madrid because you like to think that they're going to win their semi-final and they'll be in the final. I mean, they've basically not lost to anyone except the team that they're playing. So, maybe I'm just sounding a little bit dumb. Anywho, for now, Osasuna is really a bigger match for Xavi than he might want to admit that any of us might be thinking right now, because he really needs one of those days, one of those games. He needs one of those performances from his forwards, where everybody gets on the score sheet. He needs a match like that one to switch the narrative. And I think more than anything else, he needs Araujo and Koundé to refine themselves, to rediscover themselves. The version of themselves that we saw last season, they need to rediscover that. Because guess what? As at least in as far as the last La Liga game Barcelona played, we had back. We had Balde, we had Christensen, we had Koundé, and we had Araujo. We did have back. But, it didn't go so well. And, right now we're waiting to see if Alejandro Balde is going to be fit enough to start against Osasuna. Otherwise, probably we might see a few more minutes for Hector Fort, which for me, I think isn't too bad. And probably that's where we can transition a little bit to talking about some injury updates from FC Barcelona. The first one, and probably the one that's raised the most eyebrows, is the one to do with Pedri. So apparently Pedri is back in training. And, you can't help but wonder, did our medical team wait for, the appropriate amount of time? Because right now, to be honest, WebMD seems more reliable than FC Barcelona's medical team. They never know how long players are going to be out for. Cancelo got injured against Las Palmas. They didn't know how long he would be out for. They just, give that little vague statement of theirs, which we see so much, he is unavailable for selection and his recovery will dictate his return. And guess what? We saw that statement once again yesterday with regards to Inigo Martinez. So we don't know when Inigo is going to be back. But for all intents and purposes, Pedri is back in training. We've seen the videos of him running around, participating in training. And it would seem that Cancelo is also back, because I'm looking at FC Barcelona's squad that they're taking for the Supercopa, and you can see Pedri's name is there. You could see Cancelo's name is there with the asterisk next to it, which is just to indicate that they're not really sure if these guys are going to be fit enough to play, but they've included them nonetheless. So we'll see how all of that pans out. And also of interest here is that there is no Marc-Andre ter Stegen still, although we are hearing that he could be back earlier than was anticipated. So maybe by the end of January rather than by the end of February. And that means that, of course, Astralaga, who is one of Barcelona's B team goalkeepers, is going to be going to Saudi Arabia. So, Iñaki Peña keeping his place. Just a word on Iñaki Peña. I think he's probably the best backup keeper right now in Europe, second only to Ramsdale at Arsenal. I say that just because in terms of what he gives you, let's say shot stopping, for example, there isn't really a drop off from, ter Stegen. And the ball playing, let's say he's about 70% capable of what ter Stegen is capable of, which is nothing to be ashamed about, because it's very few goalkeepers who are better than Ter Stegen with their feet. In fact, I don't think there are any goalkeepers better with their feet than Ter Stegen, but there are others, who are at his level as well, the Alissons, the Edisons, the Neuers, but generally it's not possible to be better than Marc-Andre Ter Stegen is right now when it comes to distribution. The only thing that I would say Iñaki is lacking at the moment, which you'd like to see him add to his game, is just commanding the area and, claiming those high balls, because, there were quite a few instances against Barbastro as well where I thought that, a cross came in and he could have held it, but he opted to instead punch it. So, didn't really get to see him do that kind of confident goalkeeping you like. Anyway, some other interesting inclusions in Barcelona's Supercopa squad are Marc Guiu and Hector Fort. Now, for me, Marc Guiu seems a very interesting choice from Xavi Hernandez because for reasons only known to Xavi, he seems quite hell-bent on not playing this kid as much as possible, which for me is weird because literally every time Marc Guiu has stepped on the pitch for Barca, with the exception of I think one game, he has scored. He scored against Bilbao, he scored against Antwerp, he scored against Club America, that useless friendly Barcelona played. But somehow when it comes time to play him in games which matter where Barca are chasing goals, Xavi seems to not just pick him and, always sends him away. So it's interesting that he's in the Supercopa squad. Wouldn't hold out too much hope though of him getting any minutes here, especially with both Vitor Roque and Lewandowski in the team. But of course, an interesting inclusion, like I had said here, is Hector Fort. Sure, Alejandro Baude is fit and available as well, but Hector Fort being there, that speaks volume because he's good to cover both left back and right back. And right back is probably somewhere where you might need him, especially with Cancelo being out. But we'll see how all of that unfolds. And I think this just about brings me to the end of everything that I wanted to talk about for this abridged podcast episode. So, I thank you if you've tuned in, if you've been listening all this time. If you are listening in from YouTube, feel free to leave your comments. What were your thoughts, especially on the match that Barcelona played against Barbastro? And also for Barca drawing Unionistas, do you think it's going to be like more of the same? And it's just one of those games again where Barca has nothing to gain and everything to lose. And also, talk to me about that Osasuna game. What are your thoughts there? Do you think Barca has what it takes? Because for me, I think this is going to be a very big game for Barcelona, which could serve to either further dampen the mood in the Barca camp or, give them a much needed boost. Anyway, once again, thank you for tuning in. Do have a great day and Forza Barca.